Yeah, I'm returning this utter crap because this game is terrible.
Coming off the heels of my Elden Ring sucks video, because the game does suck. It's a terrible, terrible example of game design.
I got all the way through that beginning of the game. It was very bland. So I get to that guy with the mask. I accidentally attack him. He kills me.
Today I'll be giving you guys a review of Elden Ring. Essentially, don't buy this game. The name of the game should not be called Elden Ring. The name of the game should be called You Die. Again and again and again. Oh boy.
Oh boy!
So as you guys know, I did a review on Elden Ring. That didn't go very well apparently for some people.
I would love to be able to just click a magic button and suddenly make you fucking think like a rational human being. Be able to fucking absorb facts and understand opinions rather than make endless fucking mountains of excuses for something that you have a preference for.
So once again, the discussion, argument, debate of whether or not a video game such as a Souls-like or a Souls game should have difficulty, should it be added. And the irony of this is from the earlier clips that we saw actually come from Ackman's Elden Ring hot take videos, link in the description box below if you want to watch the entire thing. Greater point here being is that I would ultimately iterate that whether we're talking about those kind of people or whether we're talking about this kind of people, a person who has the opposite of the argument of those two individuals in the beginning of this video, is that they're two leaves hanging out on the same branch, on the same twig. They're more alike than they would ever admit or believe, and they fail to see how their arguments are, well, piss poor within of itself. So let's actually dive into this, why a single difficulty is so important in games like Life of Pi. Now, this just basically summarizes how he created this original topic, which, as we could see, it's been moderated because he posted it in the wrong area. The new difficulty setting option has single-handedly destroyed my love for Lies of P. But then my question is, did you ever love the game to begin with? Because if you're so weak-hearted and weak-minded that the developers can add something that objectively, to my greater knowledge, does not affect how you play or enjoy the game. I mean, you might have an argument if when they added this difficulty setting, it screwed up the original way that you played the game. But to my knowledge, it plays like it should have. In fact, if we have to iterate this, we could say that the original difficulty is its normal mode. Point being is you'd have more of an argument if you actually had evidence to back up the claim of what you're ultimately making, that somehow them adding the difficulty somehow screwed up the overall playability of the game, or you felt that by actually showing, say in like a video, the difference between the original to this updated version with the difficulty settings. But that's not what you did. So this is purely based on your opinion. And if they were to add something like this and it makes you lose the love of the game, then I would ultimately say you never loved the game to begin with enough, that you're so weak-minded that they could add something that objectively doesn't affect you or the way that you play the game. Then the problem was never the developers of the game themselves. The problem is solely on you. Now, with that being said, let's go to his original topic. Why a single difficulty is so important in games like Lies of P. Difficulty matters in games like this because of the fact that so many people who play it have trouble defeating bosses. They get killed over and over again, and eventually they want to drop the difficulty. It's a human trait. This is objective bullshit, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. Because there are tons of games out there that actually have a difficulty settings. Whether we're talking normal, easy, hard, extreme, whatever it is these developers want to pretend that it is at the end of the day, for example, me, whenever I play, and I'm pretty confident that I dare say 99% of people that play video games that have a difficulty setting, they do the same thing. If for these kind of games, and we're not even talking Souls-like or even Souls game, is that when you run into a boss and the boss is whooping your ass, it doesn't matter if we're talking even something like a turn-based, an action RPG, or even a tactics, okay? Whether we're even talking some kind of first-person shooter that has bosses, which you don't really see a lot of those, but that's neither here nor there. Point being is that players will die over and over again, and they will replay those games. And at no time, me personally, and I would dare say 99% of other players, have never gotten so frustrated that it's like, I'm going to switch this to an easier mode because, well, I've never done that. In fact, like I said, this is just my opinion, but I dare say 99% of gamers don't do that. They just try again, or they stop playing the game and they come back an hour or two or even the next day and they kick that boss's ass. Fine, I've done that plenty of times. I would also dare say that the gentleman ultimately forgets what we call the earlier life of gaming, where it was all on an arcade. And those games were purposely made hard because, hey, more money, more money, more money. Now, the irony is that when home consoles were made, that mentality of game development never changed. And none thus why you have games like, The Lion King, which is considered extremely hard within of itself. But the irony of this is that never once did you ever hear anyone ever say that the game needs a difficulty setting. In fact, some gamers look at it as, I'm going to call them soft Souls-like, all right? Mostly because they're not really Souls-like, obviously, in terms of how the game plays, but they're difficult. Different. They could be any genre, is what we're getting at. But there's no difficulty setting. It's kind of where I'm going with this. People still play them. They enjoy them. You can actually find people on YouTube that are like, hey, this old-ass game is really fucking hard. I'm going to play it. And they die a shit ton of times. I think there's also this beauty and artistic representation in the idea of whether a game has difficulty or not, and it's just naturally hard, whether because of the time period, insert more money, that's why it was hard, but developers never changed that for a home console that doesn't take money. There's almost like this self-beauty and enjoyment and fulfillment out of being able to complete those kind of games. I would also dare say that's the same for Souls and Souls-like. But once again, at the same time, them adding it doesn't directly affect the way that you are ultimately playing the game, because the way that you originally played the game is still actually there. Again, you'd have an argument if they fundamentally changed a bunch of stuff about it. Then I would also say you'd probably have a ton of people up in arms about this supposed added difficulty. But because it's not, this to me tells me that it does not fundamentally change the base way that the game plays itself. We get upset and angry that a boss is farming us and wishing that there was an easy mode. And again, I don't have to read the entire paragraph. He's kind of regurgitating the same thing. The reason I get so upset over the decision to add an easy mode to this game is because of human nature. Before the DLC, you either had to adapt or not kill a boss. There was no easy mode. It was a true test of endurance, patience, and skill. It's important that there's one difficulty because of those reasons. You didn't bring any kind of logical argument to the table, because what you're ultimately claiming, here's something that people don't understand. If you're going to sit there and try and make an argument for something, and I could rephrase your argument for the opposite to add a difficulty mode to the game, then your own argument fails. And again, it doesn't affect how you play the game. You're literally whining and crying over something that you would not use in the base of the game itself. Unless, of course, you, in your own personal way, are like, I don't trust myself enough not to switch it to a lesser difficulty. Then that's not a problem of the developers. That's a problem on you. And he just kind of regurgitates. Really, overall, we can find that even in these two paragraphs, there's nothing objective that he's bringing that actually rebuttals the idea of why not having a difficulty setting is important to these games. These are purely his opinion, nothing more, nothing less. And at the end of the day, as we all know, most people's opinion is bullshit. I bitch and moan and complain about difficulty settings being added because I understand human nature. No, you don't. Besides the fact that you literally just admit you're bitching and you're moaning and you're crying. That right there deflates your argument, and you're telling people they shouldn't listen to you because, one, you're not bringing anything logical or presentable to help back up your argument, and everything that you are coming up with is purely based on your emotional response. This will be my final post on the DLC tonight, and I'm sure the moderators will appreciate that. But please remember, this post is coming from someone who loved the original Lies of P game when it had one difficulty. I want the experience to be universal, not full of casuals who drop the difficulty at the moment they hit a wall. How is that going to affect you? Why would that change your base fundamental love of the game? Because honestly, I feel like you didn't love the game enough. If you're really honestly bitching and crying about something that objectively isn't going to affect your overall way that you play the game and your overall feelings of the game. You know, I see people shit on games that I enjoy all the time, and it really doesn't bother me. I'm like, that's their opinion. That's their thought, you know? They have that right. And sometimes they make arguments that I'm like, that's a valid argument. I could agree to that. Or they'd say, I'm like, no, that's retarded. And this is not there's nothing in here that validates what you're attempting to prove to everyone. You're basing this purely off of your own emotions and your own personal experience. But your own personal experience is going to be different than everyone else's. This is ultimately why this individual is no different than the individuals in the beginning of the video. Because it's not about what is best for the game and what is best for the community as a whole. They want it to be about them and what they like. Anyway, that's all I have to say on this particular subject. Anyway, nerds, I hope you enjoyed this video in some fashion or form. And remember, if not voicing your thoughts and concerns about the bullshit in entertainment, the bullshit fanboys say, you just might be a part of the motherfucking problem.